the far right and the populist right in Hungary, on the measures which the EU has taken in respect of both Poland and Hungary and so on. And indeed, one of the most shameful elements, specific incidents of what's happened in this whole Brexit thing, is when the Conservative MEPs, directed by Theresa May 3 months ago, voted against the very weak motion in the European Parliament to censure Orban. And Michael Gove said, in one of the most shameful statements I've heard by a minister in the recent past, that the reason why we did so is that we might need Orban's votes when it came to the end game of Brexit. So fundamental British and democratic interests are being traded because of the need to get Brexit over the line in a way that would not conceivably have happened if we weren't Brexiting. So there are really fundamental things happening there, and I don't like the look of them at all. And listening to Marine Le Pen talking about her very close association with the Conservative Party, and the bit she named people that she meets on the right of the Conservative Party, because it was a private lunch, I'm not going to divulge more, but it is genuinely alarming. It really worries me what's happening in terms of this interplay between Brexit. And remember, because I never cease to be amazed, the Conservative MP for Shrewsbury, who's a former senior army officer and all of that, he tweeted yesterday that Poland should veto any request by Britain to extend Article 50 on the grounds it was being promoted by traitorous MPs. So we now have mainstream Conservative MPs, but who are Brexiters, appealing for Brexit, for populist support in their own party, who are saying that if the Parliament of which they are a member requests the European Union to extend the Article 50 negotiating period, friendly far-right governments in Eastern Europe should veto it on the grounds that Brexit has precedence over decisions of our Parliament of which they're a member. That is quite an extraordinary thing to be happening. And it's all happening under the pressure of Brexit. And of course it gives massive succour to the extreme right of these countries. And the other bit of it which is important is that as Theresa May has sought to negotiate the end of the a finite date for the Irish backstop, and sorry for those of you who this is all getting very technical now, but the fundamental issue at stake is whether essentially Northern Ireland will continue to be a member of the EU, even if Britain goes in a radically different direction. That's what the essential thing is. And what Theresa May is trying to do in order just about to hold her party together in this great revolt she's had, is to negotiate an end point to the Brexit, a definite date that it will end. And the British government has been trying to negotiate a 5-year end point. And the Irish government has come under the most ferocious pressure to agree because of the fear of a no-deal Brexit, which could put them over the cliff edge. I couldn't understand until a few days ago why Theresa May was so optimistic that she'd get it, and I now understand why, because of things that have come out in the last few days. The governments of Hungary and Poland have been pressing very, very hard for a 5-year end date. They persuaded, it appears, from what's now come out, that they persuaded the European Commission that this should be something to be discussed by the European Council. And if it had been discussed with those governments coming on board, particularly if France and Germany were wanting a let-out for Theresa May to get her deal over the line, Ireland would have come under the most ferocious pressure to have agreed to the end of the backstop in 5 years. Because of the way it's come out and been publicised, it looks as if this plot has been foiled. But this interplay between our populists and the far right in Eastern Europe at the moment is very toxic. And the only reason it's happening is because of Brexit, because it is fundamentally antipathetic to British strategic interests, let alone British values. And if Brexit weren't happening, we wouldn't be going near this at all.
So can we take Calypso and question at the back there? So Calypso.
So thank you for this. I want to push back on behalf of Paul just now, but also on behalf of Gaby earlier. On behalf of Paul, I think everything you just said now, in a way, seems to speak against your fizzling out, that it could last forever, because indeed, that is the greatest fear of most European leaders today, and therefore, while Brexit is in limbo, this fizzling out, these kinds of dynamics will continue. Now, and so I can imagine them agreeing to an extension of Article 50 for a technical period until the European Parliament sits, which is the added argument, of course, which is part of the question. I mean, so I'm surprised that you would think that more than a couple of months, European leaders would want to extend or have this limbo Brexit, both because of the politics that you just described brilliantly in response to Paul, but secondly also for the formal reasons that the EU treaty asks for representation of any member state. So Britain would have to be represented in the EP and the Commission, etc. What would happen? And very quickly, on behalf of Gaby pushed back very well on the question of the referendum, what the question would be. And it seems to me that you kind of made a bit of a loop there, because you gave us the Swiss example, but in the Swiss example we have proposals that go against the status quo and try to change things. Whereas here we would have a proposal, the Remain, that would actually go against a vote, not something that's happened yet. And therefore all these arguments that we've already heard that a three-way question will never be accepted by Brexiters because it splits the Brexit vote, are very potent. And it seems to me the only realistic approach has been, that I've heard, is Gaby's approach, which is a two-stage, even maybe on the same ballot, or 2 weeks, first Remain or leave, and then which leave if there's leave, because your three-way will never be accepted.
Well, so
could we take the gentleman over here on the far left?
Yeah. Well, that's with the iPhone. Yeah, I hope that the European Parliament elections doesn't become an excuse. I'm sure a solution could be found. We get an extension of Article 50 that can be dealt with. I'm very worried by Liam Fox is clearly producing a Brexiteer argument now that Brexit on the 29th of March is law, and therefore you, sir, are acting illegally. That's the sort of argument we're getting. My point I wanted to raise is Mr. Putin. I do not know why in the debate before and now, the whole question of the one beneficiary of Brexit on the international stage is Mr. Putin, and why has the Culture Committee of the House of Commons has looked at this a bit, and brave work by Carol Cadwallader, a famous journalist and colleague of yours now. Why has the Committee of the Two Houses, chaired by Dominic Grieve, who's rather busy at the moment, why has that committee not looked at the allegations, including evidence that the Electoral Commission has of Russian interference in the referendum campaign? Why has the government blocked this? And you, sir, as a member of the House of Lords, could perhaps be pressing for work in that committee. Mr. Putin's a threat for the next 5 years.
Could we also take David's question, because I think we're going to have to wrap up.
Yes, thanks very much. So I'll just, what concerns me most, and I think you've summed up the history and certainly the first vote very, very well. I'm not entirely convinced, I wish I were, that a second referendum would do it. Only because I'm not sure. Brexit is the single most important, what I would call, presenting problem for the country at the moment. I'm not entirely sure that it is the real problem. And the real problem found expression in the referendum, and the real problem came in many guises: immigration, deprivation, and all sorts of things. The real problems haven't gone away. I think your suggestion that a second referendum would be won by better arguments, I'm not entirely sure it might, and that fills me with dread. So is there another way to remain?
Well, I'm open to suggestions as to what this better strategy is, because there ain't any other, unless Parliament itself just decides to revoke Article 50 without a referendum, which I think is conceivable if you had a Labour government in office. It's conceivable you could get to a position where a Labour government would do it, but I can't see a Conservative government doing it.